I was going to do a full Oscars prediction video a good bit earlier than this, but then I got a job, and then I got COVID, and then before I knew it, AFI released their top 10 movies of the year, and the Golden Globes and Critics' Choice released their nominations, Austin Butler hosted SNL or whatever.
Ruin me, Jewish Elvis! Ruin me!
And stuff kept happening. These are my predictions, these are not my preferences. My preferences will make a different video, probably, but this is just me trying to optimize my Oscars pool so I can finally retch those $5 out of Sandra from marketing's grimy mitts. I base my predictions on the usual stuff, sure, previous nominations, Oscar-y traits, general vibes, but I try to focus less on stats and more around who is voting, because the actual Academy is not some collective corporate hive mind, nor are they some computer that bases their decisions solely on trend lines and numbers. These are individual people who happen to be very corporate and have about the same taste as some computer. I want to know them, think like them, be them. My methods are not scientific or even all that well tested, but I'm trying things my way. I brought it down to 5 archetypes. The olds. A large share of voters are older folk. They like the kind of movies your parents like. The cheerleaders, industry alumni who are really proud of their work or feverishly trying to justify their life decisions, and like movies about movies, movies that are accumulations of some filmmaker's career, or a big acting showcase because they love rooting on one of their own. Popcorn munchers. Not all Academy voters are actually that involved in the movies, some are normies. They like movies that make things easy for them, high entertainment value, not too slow, not too depressing. Bonus points if a movie's heavily talked about or widely seen, less points if a movie's more obscure, because they probably wouldn't go out of their way to watch it. Messengers, formerly called disruptors, they value movies more for what they represent and prefer to save their votes for movies that touch on pressing social issues, are representative in some significant way, or otherwise push the medium of movies in a positive direction. Arthouse snobs, they are the ones who watch the most movies and tend to go for critical darlings or otherwise more unconventional picks. Yada yada, this does not describe everyone, blah blah, most voters are some sort of combinations of these archetypes, bleep blorp. Obviously, a movie has to be good or generally accepted first and foremost. This was well uneasy when I was just predicting Best Picture, in which everybody in the Academy votes. But there are actually 14 different branches within the Academy who are solely responsible for voting in their respective categories. We'll do our best to characterize each individual branch as we go on, but that's future me's problem. Best Picture. If we want to talk about who I think is going to win, it's really tough, I gotta be honest. I change my mind on a minute-by-minute basis, but I'm pretty sure it's a 2-horse race between Everything Everywhere All at Once and The Banshees of Inisherin. There are 2 big things I like to consider when predicting who's going to win Best Picture, so let's figure this out in real time. First, demographics. While you really only need to be championed by one of these demographics in order to get nominated, a winner needs a broad spectrum to appeal to most, if not all, 5 demographics by a decent margin, because the Best Picture race is decided by ranked choice voting. Banshees appeals a little bit to all demographics, particularly art houses, and I can't see any type of voter ranking this below their 4/4/5 pick. The love here is spread evenly about the Academy. EOW, on the other hand, might be more beloved by some voters, but will most likely struggle with olds. The movie has dildos and butt plugs, it's far from safe and traditional, which is especially concerning because olds are the biggest of the 5, and if a good portion of them are ranking EOW towards the bottom, that could really hurt the movie. So Banshees has that broad spectrum while EOW is more concentrated. The first point goes to Banshees. Second, one stat I do believe in is that the Best Picture has to win either director or screenplay. There is a logic to this. If people are going to call a movie one of the best of the year, it's probably going to be either due to the filmmaking or the story. EOW is really promising here because it looks to be the frontrunner for both director and original screenplay, so the odds are very much in its favor. Second point goes to EOW, so alright, I asked my dad and he likes Everything Everywhere, so maybe I'm exaggerating the extent of which olds are opposed to the movie. EOW does have one additional thing going for it too: tone. More often than not, Best Picture goes to a movie that makes audiences feel good by the time they leave the movie. Occasionally you'll get something like Parasite, especially when the film you're competing against also happens to be a downer, but usually Coda beats Power the Dog, Nomadland beats The Father, and The King's Speech beats The Social Network. EOW definitely makes you feel good, and despite being a comedy, Banshees does not. So Eow is my predicted winner and Banshees is number 2. Third is Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, which is still primetime Oscar bait and appeals strongly to olds and cheerleaders, but I don't have it winning because the movie doesn't really appeal to anyone else. Fourth is Tar, which will be championed by arthouse snobs. It appears in pretty much every top 10 year-end movies list I've seen, and I think it's turned out to be this year's Power to Dog. It's a safe nomination, but it's also slow and wordy and, let's be honest, really arthouse snobby, so I don't think it appeals too much to anyone else. Fifth, I was wrong about Top Gun Maverick. I think I was a little too strict with the whole each demographic can only have one champion thing in my last video, and I forgot to account for the fact that olds would also really love this movie, arguably even more than popcorn munchers, maybe. Despite my initial expectations, Top Gun and Avatar are making it pretty much everywhere, so... And 6 is Avatar: The Way of Water. I was right about this one. 7th is Elvis. This is a new prediction, and one of my dearest friends now gets to say she told me so. I was under the original impression that this movie was divisive, but turns out that didn't really matter for a nomination because people loved this movie enough for it to have gotten in everywhere else. Lead actor Austin Butler campaigning his butt off double helps this movie. There is a slight chance Elvis gets dropped as the year goes on, especially if The Whale, home with another Best Actor contender, manages to pick up steam. Elvis still appears to be primarily yet another popcorn muncher movie, the third, maybe fourth so far, so I maintain it is slightly vulnerable. But everyone gets 5 votes, so Elvis will probably be fine, especially if it continues to sweep the tech categories. 8th is Babylon. Since my last video, reviews have been released for the movie and the reception is definitely mixed. It's even rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. It's gonna be in my top 10 though, suck it. That's slightly concerning, but it's not like similar reviews have halted nominations in the past, especially when it appeals strongly to a currently available demographic. Don't Look Up got in by appealing to messengers, and I think Babylon gets in by appealing to cheerleaders. The reviews are significantly better than Empire of Light, and Babylon looks pretty certain to get into a few techs, so the same issues I highlighted in my previous video won't apply here. 9th is Woman Talking, my original Best Picture prediction. Oops. This is some of the worst marketing for any movie I have ever seen, and if the awards campaign is anywhere similar, we could have some big issues. The trailer kinda sucked. It makes the movie feel icier and more unwelcoming than people say it actually is. Also, what is this poster? What is this poster? The title of the film is blocking the actresses' faces. What is this poster? The movie has underperformed, especially in the critics' choice, so I'm assuming... Wait, no, it was the Golden Globes. Oh, whatever. So I'm assuming all's not right behind the scenes either. Despite MGM's best attempts, I still think the movie gets in because it feels like a shoo-in for adapted screenplay due to lack of competition. That's a huge stat, a la my screenplay director role mentioned earlier. Messengers will probably pull Drew for the movie, and people who've actually seen the movie claim it is genuinely good, but I am getting increasingly nervous. And the final and most contentious slot belongs to She Said, which feels like a bit of a boring pick for my 10th and final slot, but then again, that might be a niche in of itself. Nobody's really passionate about this movie, but I think its safeness, in combination with its social justice appeal, is most likely a boost rather than a hindrance, at least for a nomination. It appeals to 2 demographics, olds and messengers, very well, so I think She Said is the safest pick. Honestly, I feel really good about my Best Picture predictions. This seems like a very solid 10, and I think there's a marginal difference between my 10th and 11th slot, but I did have to make some cuts that could bite me. 11 might be RRR, which I would be really happy to see, and it's doing better than I ever thought it could without an official international film submission, but it's another action film. I mentioned that popcorn munchers are already spread thinner than usual, and hard house snobs, the demographic that is most likely to represent movies that are international or under the radar, probably would go for more traditionally artsy films. They would be more likely to go with my 12, After Sun, which is arguably the most critically acclaimed movie of the year, and recent trends suggest that it is these kinds of critically acclaimed movies that are most viable to sneak into the lineup at the very last minute, like Drive My Car, or The Father. We haven't really seen this manifest yet, but I'm treating this really seriously. If either Woman Talking or She Said don't work out, messengers could still go for Triangle of Sadness, like I originally thought they would, especially if it surges in the last minute with Screenplay and Dali De Leon in supporting actress, but its current performance is not quite strong enough. Netflix is still pushing Glass Onion hella hard, which should be a guarantee for pretty much any movie, especially one as beloved as this one, but I can't get over the fact that the original did not get in, and this would be yet another popcorn muncher film. Lastly, a part of me is hoping Arthouse Snobs could pull a last-minute Decision to Leave nomination, but I'm entirely convinced Decision to Leave is not the film they would go with. In the end, I only feel threatened by 5 films, which is not a bad deal, so what could possibly go wrong? Best Director. Best Director is decided by the Directors Branch, who lean slightly more arthouse snob than other branches. Keeping this in mind, I'm predicting Tar's Todd Field to win. The Directors Branch hardly go for the obvious alumni picks, like Steven Spielberg anymore. They like directors with a strong sense of style, usually artsy, immaculate style. Previous winners include The Power of the Dog, and before that Nomadland, and before that Parasite, and before that Roma. The Directors Branch has a very particular palette, an arthouse snob's palette, the kind of movie you would hang on the wall of an art museum, and Tar matches the style better than any of its close competition. Not to say it doesn't have competition, I can really see the Daniels from Everything Everywhere stealing the trophy. A large appeal to EAO is that the Daniels made a new kind of film, making the most out of limited resources, and their film is stylistically distinct from its competition. The critics groups are currently favoring the Daniels, and for the arthouse snobs, I think there are some shared tastes, so at the end of the day, the Daniels might garner the most amount of passion. And yet, despite what I said earlier, Spielberg has a perfectly viable path to victory. I did say the Directors Branch usually doesn't go for the obvious picks, but has there ever been any pick as obvious as Steven Spielberg? I tend to say Tar's Todd Field, or the Daniels from Everything Everywhere, but when it comes to the Fabelmans, I always say Spielberg's The Fabelmans. One cannot think of The Fabelmans without thinking of Steven Spielberg. I'm pretty sure McDonough gets into. Banshees is one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the year, perhaps more so than EAO, and even though Banshees is more of a screenplay movie than a director's movie, the directors still respond to subtler directions so long as they look good. We have a solid 4, but the Directors Branch is known for always doing something a little funky for their final slot, and this is the fun part, because that final slot usually goes to a fairly obscure movie rather than an industry standard pick. This is Thomas Vinterberg, or Ryunosuke Hamaguchi. It's often called the international slot, and for this reason a lot of people are predicting it to be S.S. Rajamouli from RRR. As much as I would like to see it, I wonder if the international thing is correlation rather than causation. I don't think this necessarily goes to an international director. I doubt individual directors are getting together in order to specifically check off an international director. Another thing previous international slots have in common is that they directed one of the highest critically acclaimed and arthouse snobby movies of the year. I do not think this really fits RRR in the conventional sense. With this logic in mind, I'm not picking Rajamouli, nor am I picking an industry standard director like James Cameron. I'm taking a wild swing and going with the director of Aftersun, Charlotte Wells. Wells, and by proxy Aftersun, has more in common with Another Round and Drive My Car than something like RRR, Way of Water, or even Women Talking. Though I'm also keeping my eye out on Park Chan-wook from Decision to Leave. Best Original Screenplay. The Screenplay branch might also lean more towards arthouse snobs, but I do think messengers and popcorn munchers have more of a role here than they do in the Directors Branch. As I previously alluded, original screenplay seems to come down to either Everything Everywhere or Banshees. And the first question we have to ask is, what makes a best screenplay? Does the Academy consider the best screenplay to mean the best story? Meaning the story told happens to be the most unpredictable, memorable, emotional, or unique? Or is the best screenplay the best written screenplay, with the most poetic, clever, or stylistic dialogue? I feel like in the instances when the category is actually competitive, it usually comes down to this question. In 2019, I would argue the two main frontrunners for original screenplay were Parasite and Marriage Story. Parasite had the best story, but Marriage Story was the best written in American standards. Still, Parasite won. In the same year, adapted screenplay went to story-based Jojo Rabbit over well-written Little Women. In 2020, original screenplay went down to story-based Promising Young Woman over well-written Sorkin screenplay Trial of the Chicago 7. In 2021, Coda beat Power the Dog, and though I admit this is more of a stretch, Coda was not better written than Power the Dog, but its story was overall more emotional. What I'm trying to say is, when in doubt, go with the screenplay that has the most memorable story over which one is better written. I think Everything Everywhere is story-based and Banshees is the best written. Sure, I would argue Banshees is a little bit of both. Hell, Everything Everywhere is a little bit of both too, but you think about the writing first with Banshees, and you think about the story first with EAO. Everything Everywhere is going to win original screenplay. The rest of the nominees are pretty conventional. Third is going to be The Fabelmans, fourth is going to be Tar, and fifth is either going to be Babylon or Triangle of Sadness, but since Babylon is a bit divisive and more of a directing movie, I think I'm going to lean into the messengers and art house snobs in the branch and choose Triangle of Sadness. By that same logic, the menu could also steal. I'm just going with Triangle because it is currently more popular in award shows. Best Adapted Screenplay. Adapted Screenplay. Okay, I said when in doubt, but I'm not sure how much doubt there is here. I really do think Women Talking is going to take the win. The rest of the arguable competition, Glass Onion and She Said, are not really renowned for their screenplays to that same extent. At least in that art house snobby lens. And though I can see Glass Onion stealing with its story, I don't think the film is going to get nominated for Best Pictures, so there's going to be less support as a result. Living seems like a safe number 4, and the 5th slot is tricky. I think The Whale, White Noise, Top Gun Maverick, and All Quiet on the Western Front all have about even shots, but White Noise feels too obscure, The Whale feels too divisive, and Top Gun does not resonate with the demographics most prevalent in the screenplay branch, though it has the biggest chance of stealing that 5th slot due to being a Best Picture nominee. Meanwhile, a foreign war movie and remake, pushed by big mighty Netflix, seems like it has enough going for it, doesn't it? All Quiet is my 5th slot. Best Actor. The acting branch is one of the larger branches in the Academy, and I think this is where most of the olds and cheerleaders in the Academy come from. I think this, in part, explains why Best Actor has gone to a performer from a Best Picture nominated movie for the past 12 years. This branch just does not see all that many more movies than they have to. This makes my prediction rather easy then. If I'm predicting Elvis to be in Best Picture, Austin Butler absolutely takes this award. Colin Farrell from Banshees does not get as much limelight as Butler in his movie. Banshees is not as much about Farrell's character, while Elvis is literally named after Butler's. Now let's talk about The Whale. I know Fraser is good in the movie, and I think he's definitely good enough to still get nominated. I say, not having seen the movie, I'm not the only one though, and I'm worried that will be a problem, especially since a lot of people who are seeing it seem to have problems with it, which encourages less people to see it, and it's a vicious cycle. The point I'm trying to make is, you really have to be worried with the acting branch regarding which movies they are seeing. For the last two, I heard Bill Nighy from Living seems like the kind of thing the acting branch will go for, so he can be the first slot. Tom Cruise could get in via name recognition and connections, but this branch usually likes a lot more yelling and crying, and a lot less plane flying and looking cool. Maybe we could look at Jeremy Pope from Inspection, but when in doubt, it's worth looking at Best Picture nominees, especially those that appeal to olds and cheerleaders. So, and this is not just because I am a Babylon apologist, how about Diego Calva? I think this branch will respond well to this movie, and Diego Calva does a whole bunch of grade A traditional crying and yelling, even if the movie he is in is arguably not traditional at all. Maybe look out for Paul Mescal from After Sun, but I think he only gets in if the movie gets into Best Picture. Best Actress. Best Actress is hella competitive this year, but I ultimately went with the consensus 5. Cate Blanchett from Tar, Michelle Yeoh from Everything Everywhere, Michelle Williams from The Fabelmans, Margot Robbie from Babylon, and Danielle Deadwyler from Till. And in most years, I think pretty much any of these 5 actresses could win. With the exception of Till, all of them are in what I think are Best Picture nominated movies, and all of them do that screaming and crying thing the acting branch just love. Oh, they love it when people cry. As for who I think is going to win, it comes down to Blanchett or Yeoh. But ultimately, Yeoh is a stellar part of Everything Everywhere, while Blanchett just is Tar. The movie Tar does not exist without Blanchett. Blanchett's performance pretty much makes this movie. She does the most acting and she wins the Oscar. Woohoo. Not to be dramatic, but I wanna die. Fudge. Supporting Actress is the most stacked category in the entire shebang, I have a list of 11 possible nominees, and this is the category I feel the least good about. The only performance I feel pretty certain will get nominated is Carrie Condon from Banshees, so I guess that's who I'm predicting to win. I think somebody from Women Talking also gets in, unless if the movie severely underperforms. It is an acting-heavy movie, so if it doesn't get any acting nods, then I really don't think it gets nominated for Best Picture. I don't think it wins Adapted Screenplay, and I just don't know anything. Between Claire Foy or Jessie Buckley, Buckley is the one getting nominated, so it's going to be her. Jamie Lee Curtis from Everything Everywhere has been campaigning super hard to the point where she has become sort of one of the main faces of the movie. For that reason, she has been regularly nominated in other places, and she seems like a reasonably safe bet. I have a hard time thinking anyone would nominate Curtis over Stephanie Sue, but our cheerleader-centric acting branch does not often go for new performers, and double nominations aren't usually a thing, so Curtis gets in and Sue does not. Carey Mulligan from She Said is fairly objectively a lead performance, but she's been campaigned for supporting anyway. I will grab onto any advantage I can spot. Get in there, Mulligan. 5th slot, I'm taking another gamble. When I watch movies with my parents, I pay attention to the performances they point out are very good, because a part of me thinks the Oscars will, to some extent, say the same thing. My parents said that about 3 performances this year. Michelle Yeoh from Everything Everywhere, Michelle Williams from The Fabelmans, and Janelle Monáe from Glass Onion. Monáe is in the movie a good bit, has a lot of scene-stealing scenes, and for those who have seen the movie might know, they kind of get to play multiple characters in one. Though Glass Onion isn't a Best Picture nominee, it is uber popular and it is uber pushed by Netflix, so I do think Monáe gets in at the end of the day. Dolly De Leon from Triangle Sadness could come along if the movie gets more hype, but she's only in the second half of the film. Stephanie Sue if the Academy gets their head out their asses, Hong Chow from The Whale if people decide to actually care about that movie, Angela Bassett from Wakanda Forever, who I know a lot of people are predicting, but I have a strong feeling the acting branch would not take kindly to a Marvel movie, and I heard Bassett isn't really in that movie that much. Keke Palmer from Nope. Nope is very popular, and Palmer's also pretty objectively lead. Best Supporting Actor. And Supporting Actor is much easier, thank goodness. Ke Huy Quan is going to win Supporting Actor. Quan has been sweeping critics awards, he has a lot of screen time in this Best Picture frontrunner, he gets to play with multiple kinds of identities, he has a banger comeback story IRL. As for nominees, Banshees of Inisherin has proven itself to be a very good movie for its actors. Both Brendan Gleeson and Barry Keoghan are making it in everywhere, and I think this applies to the Oscars too. Drastically overdue Paul Dano plays Steven Spielberg, Sammy Fabelman's dad in The Fabelmans, and I think he's also super safe to get in between Gleeson and Keoghan. As for my last slot, Ben Whishaw has not been getting in with other award ceremonies, and if Banshees is already double nominated, I don't think The Fabelmans could do it too. I'm applying the same logic I did with Diego Calva with Babylon, and I'm predicting Brad Pitt from Babylon to get nominated for this 5th slot. Now on to the text. I have a lot more to say about some of these categories than others. I'm sorry, I am too uncultured to be able to talk about the shorts categories, but bear with me. Best Cinematographer. Best Cinematography. It's hard to attribute demographics to the cinematography branch. Maybe Popcorn Munchers and Olds, but they do tend to stick right near Best Picture nominees, so that whittles things down. Of all the movies I predicted, I think Top Gun Maverick is most likely to win, considering a large part of the movie's narrative involves all the crazy stuff they had to pull to get all this crazy plane stuff on camera. And it looks stupidly good. Avatar: Way of Water is a potential steal though, especially considering the original won this category, but thus far people have been responding to Top Gun more. Babylon features some highly iconic shots and incredible long takes. If the movie was more acclaimed, I would be predicting it to win, but I still think it gets nominated. Though The Fabelmans is not nearly as flashy as Spielberg's previous movie, West Side Story, some of the shots still stick with you and they do cool things with the actual movie making scenes, auga. For my 5th slot, I really considered Roger Deakins' shot Empire of Light or Greg Fraser's work on The Batman, but it was between those or The Banshees of Inisherin. It is not nearly as flashy, but nonetheless features a really impressive catalog of scenery shots, and manages to tell a lot of its story symbolically with its visuals. When in doubt, go with the Best Picture nominated movie. The Batman should get in though, just saying. Best Production Design. For Best Production Design, the designers branch tends to go for large-scale extravagance. Many big sets, the bigger and the many-er, the better. Bonus points if they recreate a bunch of old Hollywood sets. I think that is why movies like Mank and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood reliably sweep this award, and I initially thought Babylon, arguably the biggest and the settiest of them all, would be the latest addition to the trend. However, the production design work on Elvis is kind of insane. We're talking multiple city blocks recreating historical locations throughout so many different points in time, and this includes more old-timey Hollywood sets, so Elvis has that covered too. The only problem I can think of is that the Elvis film is very frenetic with its cuts, so it does not show off its sets as much as Babylon does, with Chazelle's famous long takes. So it might go unnoticed with Elvis, but it's very much noticed in Babylon. But Elvis is the biggest. If it is campaigned right, I really think it could be the one to win. Perhaps Avatar: Way of Water can steal, maybe. This branch is also impressed by fantasy or sci-fi worlds. Dune won last year, Black Panther won in 2018, and something like Her got a surprising though well-deserved nomination even back in 2013. It might be a little hard to tell what is production design and what are visual effects in that movie, but it's also worth considering. Oh, and speaking of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever also gets a nomination for the same reason. I am unfortunately not sure if Glass Onion gets a nomination. Unfortunately, this branch is one of several that has a bias towards historical and or fantasy over contemporary choices. And though I would argue Glass Onion is practically fantasy with how goofy the setting can be in that movie, it's a gray area. Instead of Glass Onion, I think they nominate The Fabelmans. It has fewer sets, and despite being about a young filmmaker, it does not feature that many old-timey Hollywood sets like Babylon or Elvis. What it does have, however, is narrative. The set design team was tasked with recreating Steven Spielberg's childhood home and most frequented locations to as much accuracy as they can muster. And I think all the campaign team would have to do is send out that video of Steven Spielberg reacting to these recreated sets for the first time to warm those hearts. Best Visual Effects. Best Visual Effects. This category makes things a little easier for us because Visual Effects releases its shortlist to the public, which means we know which 10 movies have been pre-approved by the branch, and we know that half of them are going to be nominated. This also allows good old me to get really pissy about some of their choices in advance, like how they brought Multiverse of Madness into the shortlist but snubbed Everything Everywhere all at once. As you can tell by the shortlist, the Visual Effects branch leans heavily towards big budget blockbusters. And 13 Lives for whatever reason, so the more expensive and the more visual effects there are, the better. This is also the Avatar award for obvious reasons. I don't need to explain myself. Rather goofily, Top Gun Maverick looks like it's getting in despite being campaigned as the movie that didn't need to use visual effects because it used visual effects. The Batman is another studio action movie with a lot of probably CGI explosions and stylistic lighting choices, so I think that gets in. Surprisingly, Marvel movies don't get in all that much, and I think they're a lot less likely to get in now that the quality of their visual effects is slipping. So considering the original one, Wakanda Forever is pretty certain to get in. For the 5th slot, well, it could be Doctor Strange, but I'd sooner get hit by a bus. Sorry, and also the branch tends to avoid double nominating Marvel, so I think it comes down to Fantastic Beasts or Nope. You would think it would be Fantastic Beasts since they have a whole lot of effects, but for some reason the branch has not gone for any of the 2 previous movies. So I guess they just don't like Harry Potter. Meanwhile, Nope is highly acclaimed and does some really creative things with its UFO shots. It is a quieter example of visual effects, so I think I'm scared to pick it, but previous voting behavior kind of rules out most other options, so by process of elimination, it kind of has to be Nope. Best Sound. Sound! I struggled to get a read on the sound branch. They seem to be mixed between nominating artsy, quiet movies or very boom boom pow blockbuster types. One thing that seems to be consistent, however, is that they not only have a slight Best Picture bias, but they also like movies with the most sound, with usually 1 or 2 non-Best Picture nominees being given instead to very sound-heavy movies. Still, the movie nominated for Best Picture is most likely to win, and unless the movie's about music specifically, like Whiplash, Bohemian Rhapsody, or Sound of Metal, it's probably going to go to the blockbuster. The winning title is tight between Top Gun or Way of Water, but I think Way of Water is more of a visual movie, while Top Gun very much leans onto the auditory side of things. As for the other nominations, we still have to include Elvis as the Best Picture nominated music-themed film. Honestly, that could win too, the more I think about it. War movies have a lot of sound and tend to do good, so I think All Quiet on the Western Front is promising. And lastly, I have to go with Babylon, which does a lot of music and raucous party scenes. There is a lot to work with. Best Editing. Okay, this is the category I care most about. Sure, Best Picture's nice and all, but if Everything Everywhere All at Once does not win editing, I'm going to wreck up the place. I'm going to cause a scene. My loved ones will be concerned about me, and you will have to hear all about it. This isn't a prediction, Academy. This is a warning. Scarily, I think I am in the minority with this prediction. You see, for whatever reason, the film that wins Best Film Editing has also won Best Sound for the past 9 years, and EOW has no shot at winning Best Sound, so that's scary. However, I will make the argument that this is once again correlation without causation. With Best Actor and Best Picture, there's at least a logic to it. However, sound and editing are decided on by completely different branches. Let us also consider that maybe these chances are not as crazy as we're making it out to be. Right until 2 years ago, the sound category was split into 2 different awards, Best Sound Editing and Best Sound Mixing. That means that for 7 out of 9 years, Best Sound had 2 different shots at possibly lining up with Best Film Editing. Ford vs. Ferrari won sound editing but not sound mixing. Whiplash won for sound mixing but not for sound editing. With that said, let's go with what the editing branch usually goes for. I would argue that it's the film with the most editing. Dune had a bunch of montages and vision scenes, that's a lot of cuts, that's a lot of editing. Ford vs. Ferrari is a sports movie that requires a lot of frenetic cuts and fast pacing. Bohemian Rhapsody notoriously should not have won Best Editing because it cuts way too much, often nonsensically, but that does mean it's the most editing. Occasionally you will get a movie like Sound of Metal that is slower paced, I can't really explain that one, but if we want to look at movies with the most film editing, that obviously goes to Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm not saying it's necessarily locked. Top Gun Maverick is an action movie with a lot of editing too, but I really think EOW makes the most sense considering what I have described. 3, 4, 5 are Elvis, Babylon, Banshees. They're nominated for Best Picture, the editing branch is perhaps the most beholden to Best Picture nominees than any other branch, and they have a lot of editing except for Banshees, which represents the one arbitrary slower pick that tends to creep in. Because I'm pretty sure there are some minority group of people in the branch who prefer that sort of thing. Think Power of the Dog, Nomadland, Sound of Metal. I'm probably screwing myself by not including Avatar, but I think the people who vote for that are gonna vote for Top Gun instead, so there we go. Good answer, good answer. Best Original Score. Best Original Score. Long story short, the music branch is basic AF. Score is either going to go to a Best Picture nominee or an animated feature frontrunner because these are the only movies they've actually seen. It's also a shortlisted category, so our options are whittled down significantly. I think Babylon is an easy winner. It's not a musical, but the score is so prominent in this movie, just like it was in Chazelle and Hurwitz's other notable collaboration, La La Land, that it kind of feels like it at points. Women Talking might have the most recognizable main theme of these films, so that gets in 2. That's really all you need sometimes. One animated movie tends to do really good in these categories. I think since they're usually fantastical and more whimsical, I think this allows their score to better stand out, and this plot does wonders in Del Toro's Pinocchio. Plus, that movie is also a musical. I would argue, not a really good musical, but that's something. The Fabelmans probably gets in through full force of John Williams as his retirement nears, but the car scene definitely lets his music stand out. Lastly, I was torn between Banshees, which is kind of an earworm, Way of Water, which is bombastic, and Glass Onion, which is an earworm and bombastic, so I gave it to Glass Onion. Though I'm not predicting it for Best Picture, I do think they will definitely see it, and they are more likely to resonate with a fun and poppy murder mystery movie with an easily loud and recognizable score than the comparatively moodier and artsy Banshees. Best Original Song. Again, music branch is basic. Also shortlisted, they are most prone to strong narratives and big poppy movies. I do not think they can withstand Rihanna singing a Chadwick Boseman tribute in the new Black Panther movie, for instance, so that easily wins. Lady Gaga does not have the narrative, but she is Lady Gaga and she is in Top Gun. I'm not putting a lot of thought into this category, I admit, but neither is the Academy. So I think you will find my simple-mindedness to be a strength, yes. Animated musicals also do really good, so Ciao Papa from Del Toro's Pinocchio leaps right in. Not to in RRR is definitely an unconventional choice for the music branch. but it has really shown up in other awards ceremonies, so I think it will be in their radar, even if I think there is also a good chance they are even bigger party poopers than I think they are. Lastly, I don't know anything about Tell It Like a Woman, and I have never heard the song Diane Warren apparently sings for it, but she always gets in, no matter what movie she's singing for. I don't know why. We have a lot of Diane Warren stans, I think, or maybe they just know her. They are musicians after all. Best Costume Design. The smallest of the Academy branches, the Costumes branch is not nearly as beholden to Best Picture nominees as other branches. Still, they have a large period piece bias. For that reason, despite the original Black Panther managing to win its year, I think Elvis and Babylon are the films vying for the big award instead of Wakanda Forever. I'm really tempted to give it to Elvis because there are a bunch of costumes there, meanwhile a lot of the stuff in Babylon lean more toward risque sensibilities, which might be a bit off-putting to older voters especially, but Elvis leans more towards recreation, and I do think the costumes branch usually goes for original costumes, even if their tastes are a bit narrow. It's a toss-up, but I will predict Babylon to win. As for other nominations, the costume branch adores movies about costumes and fashions, so I think the otherwise unmentioned Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris takes the 4th slot. For the 5th slot, I noticed not many people are predicting this one, and I'm worried I'm missing something, but I saw the trailer to this movie like once, but I don't know how Corsage does not get in. They love movies about old-timey aristocrats and royals, they love movies about big poofy dresses. Am I missing something? Will they not see it because it's international? Only time will tell. Best Makeup and Hairstyling. It's called Makeup and Hairstyling, but I have noticed that they lean especially towards makeup rather than hairstyling, and they lean especially towards prosthetics. The Whale has the most prosthetics and it's associated with a Best Actor frontrunner, so that's my tentative pick to win. But if the fat suit conversation proves too controversial, or if nobody wants to see the movie, two very possible options, the Batman could steal due to the transformative work they did on Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Or, Elvis has much less prosthetics, except on Tom Hanks, but it's probably better for the movie overall if people don't talk about Tom Hanks. There is, however, a good amount of makeup, and they do succeed in making Austin Butler's Elvis look older as the movie goes on. I can see that winning too. I just noticed that the 3 biggest frontrunners for Best Actor are all associated with the top 3 makeup and hairstyling nods. But just that Farrell's associated here with a different movie. I just thought that was neat. Anyway, All Quiet on the Western Front does a lot of stuff and tells the story through makeup, with more stuff caking the character's face paralleling the soldiers' further disillusionment from the war effort, I assume. I haven't actually seen the movie. And I don't know what to do with the 5th pick, I'll just give it to Babylon. Best Animated Feature. Okay, the Academy has proven time and time again that they have little to no respect for animation outside of children's entertainment, so the real question we unfortunately have to ask is, once again, which one are they going to actually see? That might explain why Disney and Pixar pretty much win every year. Still, an outsider can win the trophy if it happens to really stand out. And since Disney and Pixar kinda struggled this year, but Netflix put everything they had into marketing Del Toro's Pinocchio, making it pretty much a mainstream in film news, I think Del Toro's Pinocchio takes the win. Disney and Pixar's strongest horse is definitely Turning Red, which I do think has more of a chance of winning than others are giving it credit for. However, let's not forget that Turning Red was kinda divisive too. It's the period movie. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish came out recently, and by gosh, it is actually really good. And it's getting a good amount of attention, I think, due to its animation style and very solid writing. If people kind of chill out about Pinocchio for whatever reason, then maybe Last Wish wins the Globes. That honestly seems like something they might do, and if enough people follow suit and keep talking about this movie instead, it's a long shot, but I'm telling you, it's possible it could steal a win. I can kind of see a world where Marcel wins, but I can also see a world where it's snubbed. It's a very unconventional animated movie, and since it's arguably more for adults than for kids, there's a chance it does not get the views it needs. But Marcel's not only considered one of the best animated movies of the year, but one of the best movies, period. It is by far the critics' favorite of this lineup, and I think that counts for something. The last slot, I thought, could go to another Disney movie like Lightyear, or especially Strange World. I really don't want to underestimate the power of Disney's default. Then I remembered that My Father's Dragon was also released. the latest Cartoon Saloon film, which is an animation studio very much beloved by the Academy. Then I thought about the fact that they nominated Raya last year and I still defaulted to Strange World, which might be a mistake because even I haven't seen this movie, but I have learned not to overestimate the creativity of the Academy. Best Documentary Film. Okay, I should know more about documentaries than I do considering I've interned for a documentary film studio. I'm also on the losing side of things because the documentary branch is notoriously one of the most fickle and hard to predict branches in all of the Academy. My actual prediction is that All the Beauty and the Bloodshed has to win, considering that it is consistently talked about as one of the best movies of the year. It's relevant, it's stylish, and it's popular. However, the Oscars always snubs the frontrunner out of the nominations. So Beauty and the Bloodshed is being taken right off and my second choice, Navalny, is going to win instead. Tricky Slipsy. After that we have, I gotta be honest, all of the documentaries I happen to recognize on the shortlist. Descendant, Fire of Love, All That Breathes, and Moonage Dream. I'm sorry, I'm a noob. Best International Film. Again, international features all about which movies they have actually seen. That makes my first few picks very easy, because I'm pretty sure even the non-Oscar initiated have heard of South Korea's submission Decision to Leave, and Germany's submission All Quiet on the Western Front. From here, I have heard a good bit of talk about Belgium's submission Close and Ireland's The Quiet Girl, so I'm assuming these will also be given some attention. From there, I have to choose between Austria's Corsage, Mexico's Bardo, Poland's EO, and Argentina's Argentina 1985. I heard Argentina 1985 is pretty Oscar baity. EO has made it in a lot of critics' top 10s, and Inarritu is a renowned and already Oscar-winning director, so his latest film, Bardo, could very well have been on voters' minds already. It's just that Bardo did not receive the best reviews. I think it could be any of these movies I mentioned, but if I think Corsage could get a costumes nod, then I'm in for a penny, why not? According to Wikipedia, the only people who can vote are apparently the people who attend the screenings of all 5 nominees, but I seriously doubt that. It pretty much always goes to the nominee that's given the most attention. The win is between All Quiet and Decision to Leave, and when Oscar season begun, Netflix kind of dropped All Quiet like a kidney stone, so I think this is very much in the court of Decision to Leave. RRR totally would have won if India submitted it, but who knows, there's always Best Picture. You know, the filmmakers actually get to keep that award. Okay, I have immortalized my shower thoughts for all to see forever. Will history be kind to me? I don't care so long as Everything Everywhere wins Best Editing. If you like this video, let me know in the comments whether you agree with me and what you would like to win. Feel free to also subscribe for more thoughts and year-end lists. MapJ out!